Hey guys, what's up? It's here in North Carolina. I'm Bobby Davis, the founder of Coder Foundry and the CEO of Cortex, where we build software for people around the country. I'm here joined by my producer extraordinaire who's in lockdown still. Hey, Kevin, what's up?
Hey, good. How are you?
All right, good. So we're going to do some more coding today, huh?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. We got a good chunk done yesterday, but today we're going to learn the good stuff. We're going to do the JavaScript stuff.
Okay, yeah, we're going to do that. So we'll get into that real quick here. We'll start a little quicker. I don't think we start coding until like 20 after. We'll start faster today.
Do we not? We'll definitely try and go faster today.
Yeah, or at least start earlier. We may not go faster. We'll start earlier.
Definitely. I do want to do one thing first, though.
Let
me pull up this thing right here and share my screen real quick. So I saw overnight that Microsoft Build Conference, the registration open for it. It's on May 19th and 20th. And the cool thing is, it's virtual this year.
Yeah.
And even cooler than that, it's free.
It's free and virtual.
Yeah, so you can register. They have some interesting stuff on here. So Scott's on this front page too. Look, so his video is actually really funny. So he does a lot of cool stuff. Yeah, he does a lot of cool stuff at this build conference. So he'll be doing some stuff, and his video is funny. You should go to this page and watch it. It's a funny video.
Okay.
But they have like these. So it's over, I think, 3 days. That is.
Okay.
And it's it's a couple of days, I guess. So 48 hours. Yeah, and there's multiple tracks. And you can choose. It's not just one live stream. It's multiple live streams you can watch. It looks super interesting. So
yeah, I'm gonna definitely be there. So I'll be there watching. And,
and it's because it's a conference for developers, right? So
it's pretty good.
And they normally announce something cool
though. They always do have something cool to announce.
Yeah. So there'll be something there. So here you go. Steen says announcing .NET 5.
I'm sure they'll talk about .NET 5.
They'll talk about it. They would definitely talk about it.
Yeah, I think the most famous build conference is when they announced the end of Silverlight and the internet blew up.
How did they do that? I don't remember seeing that.
He just came out on stage and said HTML5 is where we're going, and then we don't like Silverlight anymore. And everyone was like, "What?" So
yeah,
it was kind of like just, oh, by the way, Silverlight's dead. Kind of funny.
Hey, at least they said something. They could have just not said anything and just killed it off. But
then they were backtracking for weeks, but it really was dead. So it's not dead.
That's funny. I know there's somebody new here, Beth. If you are new here, that's awesome. Thank you so much for checking us out, commenting. Thank you for the likes. Thank you for subscriptions. Thank you for everything. That's why we come here every day.
Cool.
So yeah, that's cool. So I hope you saw yesterday's too. That's awesome. Thanks. Just a few highs. Glenn said hey. Doug said hey. There's a bunch of people in here. The usual gangs here. Plus.
Okay. All right. Cool. Well, I guess we can get started, huh? Do we want to do some coding here real quick?
Yeah. Yes. Let's jump in.
I'm going to do real quick. I know this is part 2, but like if you're here for part 2 and you missed part 1, you weren't here to the back channel yesterday. I'm going to show you real quick what we're going to build. Then I'm going to show you kind of where we're at, and then we'll just start off from there. So this is real quick here. So like we're building a coding challenge, and this is called Superdog Events. And it's got some data here about some Comic Cons. And so just some Comic Con data that I made up. It doesn't come from anywhere in particular. I just made the data up. And then I've got some stats. If you pick a location, you can see the stats of the particular location, like total, average, most, and least. And this comes from a coding challenge where if you were given an array, you maybe asked this in an interview question, given an array, can you give me the sum of all the values in the array, or give me the average of the values in the array, or give me the most or the biggest value, or give me the least value? And so we asked that coding challenge in Coder Foundry, and they're required to solve it. And what I wanted to do was make it interesting. So, that's kind of cool.
So how far did we get yesterday with this?
Well, I'm going to show one more thing though, right?
Okay.
So like So like yesterday after I got off, like I also added this too. So you can add new events now.
Okay, awesome. And this
I
is
don't
all
know
JavaScript, right?
Yeah, I don't know if we'll get there yet, but like this is called a Bootstrap modal. And
Yeah, we'll leave that till the end,
to the
just in
end.
case.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a bonus, but we'll talk about that at the end.
Yeah, exactly. So where we were was just building out our UI, and so like we didn't have much going on, so we need to like do some stuff here.
Okay.
Here, it's empty. So I was
Yep.
messing around with it. So
Okay.
it's empty now. So what I want to do is create the drop down here, and so that you can like select a city and then filter the results of the grid. So that's what we're going to work on.
So that's
right
the
now.
next step. So do we need data to do that then?
We are going to do it data driven. I'm going to do it first. I'm going to do it first as static to show you kind of how the control works. Then we're going to take that out and then add it through JavaScript.
Okay.
So I think that's pretty cool. You know?
Is this a way you would normally do this too? Would you put in like static data to test the thing, or is that?
I'm just doing it so you understand like how the control was. Once you
Okay.
understand how the control is built out in HTML, then it'll make more sense while we're trying to build HTML in JavaScript.
Okay.
Okay, so if you remember, we had this kind of thing going on. We had a container, a row, a column, and we had our button here. And so this is the button that's driving this right here, but it's empty. So there's no links in here yet. So let's add some links. Okay, so to do that, you basically use, you can use A tags. You could use unordered lists. I'm using A tags, which are just, an A tag is a link to a resource, but you could use it however you want. So, so basically what you need to do is just create some tags in here. So I'm going to say A, and that's pretty easy to do. And so I just need an A tag in here. Get my stuff going on here. So then an A tag has obviously an href. And then in this case, you know what? We're not even going to use an href. We're going to use JavaScript to do this. So we're not really going to a page. If you were going to other pages for your menu, you would use an href here and tell it what page you want to go to. But in the case of this one, we're not really going to go anywhere. Okay. So I'm going to give it a class. And then in this class, it's called dropdown item. And you can see right here, IntelliSense is giving me the class, and that's a Bootstrap class, Kevin.
Okay.
And then I'm going to go ahead and code something here, but we're not going to use it yet. But I'm going to code an onClick event. And I'm going to call a JavaScript function here eventually, but I'm just going to leave it blank for now, and I can show you how we can add that in there.
So that's just a placeholder because you know you're going to call a JavaScript event in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right. The other thing I'm going to do is this this attribute I'm going to add called data string. And so instead of like passing the New York or the Charlotte or California around, I'm going to hold those values in a data string so that my JavaScript later on can read it. You know, just something I did. You could do it in multiple ways.
Okay.
And then I'm just going to close this out, and then I'm going to give it the label. So this is like New York.
So that's what appears in the actual drop down, right? Okay.
So what I'm going to do is copy this. Look at that, man. I'm using my keyboard correctly.
Hey, there's a learning curve. You'll get there.
I'm going to get there. And then I'm just going to add in, I think it's California. It doesn't matter. Obviously, these aren't in alphabetical order. That's spelled California, right?
And if anybody has any questions as we go through this too, by the way, just put them in chat and I'll make sure to put them up and we'll answer them.
Yeah, the reason that I show you this stuff is because like kind of how I'm working. And again, the keyboard is killing me. All right, so like so I'm gonna get this Command C. All right, I have to visually or mentally tell myself. And then I'm going to add in North Carolina in here. You can see if you were doing this by hand and you had a bunch of pages and then those pages could change or the data could change and you would be in here modifying this all the time. And one other control that I did was I also added what's called a separator as well in here. And so that's another thing that you can do where you can separate your links or maybe you group them together. And there's like a physical separator.
Oh, this is like a visual thing?
Yeah. So like you can
Okay.
like group the links together. And it's just they use a div tag here and then just have a class equals drop down divider.
Oh, okay. Again, another Bootstrap class.
Yeah. And then you can put another A tag in here.
And this will make sense, I guess, when I see it too. I can sort of have an idea what it's going to do, but
yeah. All right. And I'm going to go ahead and code my own quick here. Should have copied it, but I didn't. So you can watch me type or struggle on the keyboard. So what I'm going to do here, this is where I'm going to put my all. And I'm going to close that out. And so that I have the all scenario. If I did this right and I save it, I should be able to come over here and pull up my code here. See, now I have the links.
Okay, so the separator is just, it's like an almost like a half line.
It's a line in there. You can sort of
okay.
see it.
Oh, it's a whole line? Okay. Oh, I can't sort of, but maybe other people can. It's kind
On
of
the
small on my
screen, you
screen, but
can.
okay. Okay.
There's a little line, a little faint line in there. And I'm sure that you could colorize this and make it like 2-point bold and whatever you want to do.
Right.
That's the default action inside of Bootstrap.
So you could overwrite the Bootstrap CSS with that, I'm guessing, and put your own in.
Or add your own class in there and just do whatever you want to do. It's probably a border, a bottom border or something like that.
Yep.
On this div class. I don't know what it is. I really have to go look up, see how they did it.
Mark asked if you're going to have a JSON file for the Comic-Cons after this.
Would help my project a ton.
You can make one, Mark, and share it.
Yeah. So I've got some data that you'll have. The data that I'm using is in an array, an object or array of objects. So we'll get that in a second. So
here's a question too,
right now,
about
this doesn't do anything. Yeah, go
here's a question too. Betty asked, would BR do the same thing with the BR tag?
In here?
Yeah.
Yeah, it would break it and move it down, but it wouldn't have the line in it.
It wouldn't have the visual part with it. Okay.
Yeah. So my suggestion is just use the Bootstrap the way it's built out. So you can go say, how do I build drop downs in Bootstrap 4? Go to the documentation, and you can cut and paste a whole div tag in here with all the links in there, and then change it how you want, and just follow their kind of design.
I've definitely done that before. Their documentation is super good. You can they give you a good idea of something, and you can literally copy and paste it and put it in, and then change what you need to change.
Menu.
We're taking our time hand coding this because we want to show you how it works rather than just copying and pasting a bunch of stuff in.
Yeah, so like I just want to show you this real quick and just show you how easy it is. So like here's a single button, and this is the style here, and then you could just literally just copy this and paste it in your site.
Yep.
Okay. And then they have different ways in here. They go over the colors, and this is where I noticed that if you put button danger here, this button is red, and that's where you're getting the colors from. This is what I'm using, a split button with the secondary link here. They have them different sizes, and they have drop down variations where they can go up.
Oh, cool. And off to the side. Wow,
go to the side, however you want to do it.
And this is all already in there. You literally just copy and paste that into your project.
Right. And so once you understand how they work, you can, it's really easy to come here and figure it out. And then they also have alignments and things like that, like it can go right underneath it. Then they have some plain ones, stuff like that. So enough of that. So like we need to also, if you look at our, we need to add our table under here where our data is going to go.
Okay.
But I think what we can do is, why don't we go ahead and let's finish out the UI and then let's get on to the JavaScript. Or would you rather do the JavaScript to see how this is data driven?
Yeah, let's do the JavaScript and then polish it up at the end.
All right. So like, let me pull this over and then me bring I lost VS Code. I hate my MacBook.
Don't say that.
So, all right. So what I need to do is I'm going to take this out, okay, and then I'm going to create a function that will write these lines in here. Okay.
Okay.
Does that make sense? All right. So we're going to take this out. So now it's no longer going to be hard coded. And what I do a lot is I'll put a comment in here where I'm going to put my template, or I'm going to say template data for drop down. You can do something like that. Because this won't show up, and even when you do view inspect, it won't show up here. So like if you're looking for a problem, you'll see where your data is going to go. This gets inserted after the page is rendered. So when you do inspection, you won't see your rendered items in there. It's kind of cool.
Okay.
So we go over here, and we don't have a function in here. We don't have any functions in here at all. So we're going to write our first function.
So this is your .js file, right?
Yeah.
Trying to see.
Okay. All right. So the first thing we need to do is we actually need to start creating our data. So I'm going to make something called events, and this events is going to hold our data. And so in order for me to make the drop down, I'm going to make an array of objects.
Okay.
This is the syntax for that. So the brackets here, or the square braces, is for the array, and this is for the object. Okay. So each line will be its own object. And then you can put labels in for these things. So I'm going to make something up here. Nothing special about the word event. Okay. And I'm going to call it Comic Con. And then I can put a comma, and I'm going to make another one, and it's going to be city. And then I'm going to call it New York.
So these are the different, what are they called? Data elements of our.
Yeah, they're data elements.
Okay.
Properties on our object.
Okay, properties on our object. That's it.
Yeah. And so you can see here I have a city, I have an event, which is the name of my event. The city is New York. The state is going to be New York. Okay. Then I'm going to add a property called attendance. I'm just going to put a number in here, which is going to be.
That's what we're going to do our math functions on, right?
Yep. So this is a number, so I didn't put quotes around it. Okay. Can't have any formatting or that turns it into a string. And then I'm just going to add a date in here. And dates are going to be strings for this case. That's one event. And that's how it's represented in the file. And then if I want to add another one, I'd put a comma and add another line. So I'm going to do that, but I'm going to copy it. And the reason I'm showing you is because I'm just showing you my my workflow here. I'm going to make them all. I think I did it right. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. All right. And then I'm just going to come back and change these. So I know I got 3 New Yorks, and I had some attendance in there. I'll try to get my data like it was before. I think I did 257 in here. Okay, and you can ask some questions while I mock this data up if anyone has a question. I'm going to change my dates in here to 2019 because we haven't got to 2020 yet because they're all canceled. All right, and then I'm going to add in, start adding my California. So in San Diego is where the best one is. California.
New York would probably debate that. I don't know.
Yeah, I think
they'd be like, well, the biggest maybe. Or maybe it's not even the biggest, is it? I think we saw that yesterday. They weren't even have the most amount of attendees. So, the most well-known, maybe?
Yeah. Now, what I'm doing is I'm mocking up data. Typically, this is going to come out of a database, or it's going to come out of some kind of API. But you're going to get it in objects like this, and you got to deal with objects like this. So if you're coming back from the Dark Sky API or something like that, you're going to get a format that looks very similar to this. And you got to find out where each of your data is. And how to,
doesn't really matter where that data comes from. You're just hard coding it in here now. You're making it static, but like you said, it could come from an API or from. Would a user input look similar to this then, or no?
No.
Okay.
So like you're going to see this would come back in a JSON file typically on the if you hit a RESTful service or something like that.
Okay.
It's going to look similar to this. It depends on how they write their APIs and things like this. The reason I'm doing this in the tutorial is to show you typically this is the type of data that you're going to be messing with. So I'm going to show you how do we how do we maintain, how do we work with these kind of things? So like most of the simple examples you see are like one-dimensional arrays, and this is an array of objects. I'm going to explain all of this in just a second. And if you have any questions about array of objects, now's the time.
You got a typo in there too, by the way, on that line you're on there. There you go. Right there.
Thank you. And then now's the time to ask, kind of like here over the line.
Here, Rafinko has a point here. It says, when I see the answer, it doesn't help every time, but with a commentary, it's a whole different story. They're having a discussion around like showing this, and it's true. Sometimes just the answer to something doesn't work. Like, so we have our most popular YouTube video is the one coding project, and people complain about it. And the number one comment on that video is "land the plane, Larry," which is funny. It's a funny comment, but I think it's like a 12-minute video or something like that. I don't think it's not super long, but we don't say that the one project is a bug tracker until sort of 10 minutes in or whatever it is. And people complain about like, hey, I just want to know the answer, but the answer doesn't really mean anything. Just knowing you have to build a bug tracker without knowing what's involved in a bug tracker, knowing what the sort of the requirements are, it doesn't mean anything. We can tell you like, hey, go build a bug tracker. You'd be like, okay, and you may not hit the requirements of the actual application.
Right.
So yeah, having the context and having the whole story is definitely different.
Yeah, I think so. Oops. All right. So like now I've got my data in there, and I want to explain this real quick. So this is an array. And so this object right here is at index 0. So all arrays start at 0. And then in here, you can say event and how you index it and how you look at it. And I'm just going to put some pseudocode here. 0 would be this right here. To get to the attendance, you can watch this. And this is why I put labels on them. It now gives me the properties. If I didn't put indexes or properties on these, I'd have to do it by number. And that would be something like this one would be 0, 1, 2, 3.
Okay, I see.
Okay. So what row am I on? And then what column am I on? Basically is what you're looking at. So these are rows. If you can think of these as rows in the database, and these are the columns in the object. Or if you're looking at Excel spreadsheets, that would be it. But the reason we put labels on them is so we get this kind of intelligence built in.
Cool.
So it's kind of cool. All right. So that's an array of objects. All right. And so an array could be one-dimensional where it doesn't have these labels, it just has values separated by commas, but I've got objects separated by commas. Okay. Kind of cool.
Yep.
All right. So I'm going to do something real quick here. And this just comes from experience. So I'm going to create a copy of this.
Okay.
Okay. And so when I'm going through this, I'm going to filter this list by city. And that's what our drop down is going to do. Okay. And I want a distinct list of cities. And then when I select a city, I'm going to filter this list in its entirety by city. So I would get these 3 rows back for New York, and then I'm going to do my calculations on that. So I know that I'm going to filter them. Another variable here, and I'm going to call these filtered events. And I'm going to set that equal to currently right now to all the events. So it's set to all of them. And then I'm going to kind of change this as we go along. I'm going to be moving arrays in and out, or objects in and out of this variable. But this events, I'm not going to touch. I'm going to keep it, all of them in there. If I started filtering this, then I would lose this. So I need to have a working copy of this if I'm going to filter it around.
So is that for the purpose of just displaying them on the screens, or for the math function so that it's
for everything?
Okay.
So like I'm going to filter the list and show you the stats for North Carolina. I may want a list of unique cities, so I'm going to filter that. So there's a lot of things I'm going to do with this.
Okay.
So I just know that I'm going to need a working copy. See, what people need to understand is that this right here, when it runs, is put into memory. And if I modify this, then these can go away. So I need to make sure that I have something to work with. Okay. So let's go build our dropdown. So now we have some data. I'm going to build a dropdown of specific cities. But this comes into one thing right away. It's like a very interview question you get all the time is like, how do I get a unique set of values from an array? And so like, not only does this project go over like the least, the max, and the most, it also is going to have a lot around array manipulation. And so this, trust me when I say this, people are going to ask you this probably, and how do you get a unique set of arrays, a unique set of values from an array? Okay. So I'm going to create a function, and this is the syntax for a function. So if you haven't seen JavaScript functions before, I just use the keyword function, and I gave it a name. What I do is I start all my function names and variables with a lowercase, then I uppercase each letter after it. That's just kind of what I do. A lot of people kind of code it that way. Just remember, however you spell this is going to be case sensitive throughout JavaScript. So if you make it all lowercase, then make sure when you're referencing it, it's all lowercase. But if you follow a naming convention, then it's easy to remember how you did it. So if you're going to have lowercase first letter, uppercase every letter after that, then make sure you follow that throughout your code, or you're constantly going looking kind of stuff where it's spelled.
I have a question for you too here.
Yeah.
Right. Mark says, I don't know the answer to this. Don't you have to use the spread operator to equate those arrays?
And we'll talk about spreading in just a second.
Okay, we'll get there.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll just get there in just a second.
Okay. Adam said camel case all things.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So that's how I do it. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get a handle to the HTML that I built this with. So let's go back over here and look at the front HTML. And so you notice right here, I gave this an ID. So again, these IDs have to be unique. So if you have like a lot of pages or you're doing whatever, you need to come up with a name convention so that you know that when I call something from an ID, that I'm going to get a unique one. So just know that could be a problem if you don't have a good naming convention. All right. And so in this case, I call this event dropdown. That's what I called it. So JavaScript can find anything with an ID with a simple statement. So, and there's other ways to find things too. I'm not going into everything, but I'm going to get an event dropdown. That's what I called it. And I'm going to find it by doing this. I'm going to call it document. And this gives me a handle, the document that this thing is on. Okay. That the JavaScript is referenced to. And that's why we have to reference it with a script tag so it knows what document we're looking at or which HTML file. And then I'm going to call get element by ID. And you can see there's some other things like name, class name, and stuff like that, which can return more than one control. But that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for a specific control. And ID. So that should be document get yeah, spell that. It's not looking right. Let's see what's going on here. Okay, so now I'm going to give it the name of the drop down. And remember, I'm going to go over this a little bit, and then I'll move on and go quicker. So this case sensitive has to correspond to this ID right here. So any element in HTML can have an ID. You don't have to put an ID on everything, just the ones that you want to reference. Okay. So now I have a handle to this div tag right here. So that's kind of cool. Fairly easy. And remember, you got to, each line has to end with a semicolon for each statement. And so what I want to do next is I want a set of distinct events. So you can see this data up here, and I want distinct events, which means distinct cities is really what I want. I want all of the New York, all of the San Diego, and all the Charlotte. But I don't, when I want to work on my array or show my list box, I don't want to have a drop down of 3 New Yorks and 3 San Diegos and 3 Charlottes. Now I could do that if you wanted to see just data on one of them, but what my drop down is doing is showing me for New York, kind of what's my average attendance, what's my total attendance. So that's kind of the thought process behind that. So this is where it may get a little bit weird if you haven't seen this before. Okay. So I'm going to get distinct events from an object or an array of objects. And let me get it there. Okay. If you get any questions on this, it's going to. But here's how you do this. So I'm going to create a variable. Now, what I did here was I did let here. I probably should have did let here right here. And let is how it's cased up in here, which means that these variables apply inside this function. This var would be everywhere, which I'm going to use in a lot of places. Let would be cased or kind of scoped inside this variable, which means that I couldn't get a handle to event DDD in another function. The reason you do that is so that you can reuse variable names inside of other functions. So like for example, in a for loop, you want to reuse that a lot. So, all right.
Okay.
So I'm just going to go ahead and make something kind of long here. Variable name, distinct events, just so it makes sense to what we're trying to do. So I just came up with a name here, distinct events. And what I'm going to do is do this. All right. So I'm going to, I need an array of New York, San Diego, and Charlotte that comes back to me in an array. I want 3 values in that array. I don't want 9. I want 3. So I know this is going to be an array. So I put my brackets in there. And then I'm going to use something called the spread operator. And this is what that's going to do. This is going to create 3 elements or create elements and bring them back into the array. So it will basically, behind the scenes, whatever values it gets, it's going to put it in the array format, which would be New York, comma, San Diego, comma, Charlotte. Okay. So that's a spread operator. So give me back a new individual elements from an array. Then I need specific ones though. So this set operator says, okay, of the value that's getting ready, I'm going to send you, just return each one that's different. Give me all the unique values from the array that's passed in here.
Okay.
Okay. So I've got to pass an array in here, and then it's going to run through that array and only return the ones that are unique into this, which then turns that into my comma delimited list. Okay. So it gets a little complicated here, and this is the most complicated thing that we're going to do. So I'm going to pass it events. Now I could pass it if I had a multi-dimensional, I've had a singular dimensional array that just had New York's, San Diego's, and California, and it wasn't multi-dimensional like this is. This would be real easy. You just pass it the array and it would return the unique values in that one-dimensional array. But we don't have that. We have objects. So I need to like map or tell it which of these columns that I want. And so I use the map function for that. And I got to tell it which ones I want inside of that. So I'm going to create a little variable here called event because I want the event. And I say I just want the event dot city. And you can see here it knows it knows what it is. So that's kind of cool, right? Because the events in here is like, okay, I've got this multi-dimensional array. Now return, and that's called map. And then tell me which one I can get, and that's the city. So it's basically only looking at the cities. Then once it gets that city list, it says just bring back the unique values and then turn that into an array. And now we have an array of distinct events. So questions on that? All right. So that's the hardest thing that we're going to do in this. Then I'm going to do some HTML shenanigans here. Okay. So I have a, I want to write out HTML. And so HTML are just strings. And so I know that my div tag, remember that divider tag that has all the alls in it, was at the bottom of it. Remember when we did the all tag?
Yep, in the drop down.
Yep. You remember that? Okay. So I'm going to paste that over here now. So I just copy that HTML that we did. We'll go over this real quick. So you can see here I have div class, and I've started it with a single quote because I've got double quotes in here. And this is just my HTML that we wrote before. Okay. Now in this thing, I've also got an on click event called get events, which we haven't written yet. We'll get to that in a second. And you can see now I've got my data string all in here. So what this HTML is telling us is when I click on it right here, call this other JavaScript function. We will write that in just in a minute. And so I'm going to set this up. So now I'm going to write this together. So what I'm going to do, my goal is to concatenate all of the A tags and build a string as I go. So I'm going to run through a list of these arrays using a for loop, and then I'm going to tack them together, and then I'm going to write them to the screen. So that should be, hopefully that makes sense. And so I need a variable to hold what my final result's going to be. And so I'm going to call this result HTML. Now, if you're using something like React or some other templating engines, a lot of this is handled for you, which is the reason you have templating engines. But sometimes you don't need it. And I'm actually today, if we get all the way through this, I'm going to actually show you the templating part that's directly in vanilla JavaScript that kind of solves a lot of problems that we're going to go here. But I want to show this because sometimes you just need to do this. And I also want to show another cool feature. It's called template literals, but we'll get that in a second. All right, so what I want to do is I want to loop over all of these distinct events that I got, okay? And so I'm going to make a for loop here. I'm going to set I equal to 0 because remember that arrays start at 0. So I want to start at the first position of the array. Give me the first unique name that you come across, okay? And then as long as I is less than the length, I'm good. And this is how you get the length of it. Then each time I loop around, I add 1 to I. That's how you do that. Does that make sense? That's a for loop in JavaScript. So I start at 0, and then each loop, I'm going to add 1 to I. That's what this is doing. So this first time it's 0, I'm going to do my statement in here. The second time I'm going to come around, I'm going to add 1, and it's going to be, now I is going to be 1 because 0 plus 1 is 1. Then I'll loop again. The third time I'll add to it again, and this will be 2. So 0, 1, 2 would be all 3 elements. The length of this would be the length of the array. Now this is a variable. So if this had a lot of data in here, let's say we added 20 cities or 50 cities, I don't have to like rewrite my code because I'm looking at just the length of the array that this comes back. So this will work for any amount of cities that we want. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say my result HTML, which right now is an empty string, and I'm going to add in some HTML here. I'm just going to copy this because I'm going to show you kind of something cool. I didn't feel like typing it again. All right, so what we have here is remember our A tags that we made before? Now, here's something that you need to pay attention to. Write this down if you don't know what this is. This is a template literal. And if you look real close, this is a backtick. This is not a single tick. This is the backtick underneath the tilde in your keyboard. So if you're on a Mac and usually on a Windows keyboard, that's the far left top key. Okay, it's a backtick. Okay. Once you have a backtick on here, now I can insert variables in here now. And this is by using $ bracket and putting the variable in there. So when I'm looping over here, I can get distinct events at the position 0. Remember, we've got arrays of 0. And this will pull back the name. And I'm going to put that in the data string. And then I'm going to put the name here. And those are variables.
So I remember seeing this. This is instead of doing like concatenation, right? This is instead of doing plus having another
another string
variable, then going back to another string and jamming them all together. This is instead of that.
Yeah. So if you're doing anything adding strings together, what I advise you today, if you're not using template literals, start doing that. Go do some research, and hopefully this will make sense to you. All right. Then I'm gonna results HTML, okay, and I'm going to add in my link, my ending HTML right here, okay. So I looped over this 3 times, so now I've got 3 A tags in it, and then I tack on that divider all tag at the end, and that's what I did. And then, so now I've got this in memory. Now I need to set it and write it to my page. So I get my drop down that I got from here from my get element ID. Okay, so now I have a handle to that. And I can set this to enter HTML. And I set that equal to my result HTML. Okay, so that's kind of cool. So I'm going to save, and let's see it's not going to work, but I just want to show you kind of.
Yeah, and see where we've got so far.
Okay. So you would expect this to work, but let me make sure that I took it out of my index. I did. Did I call it up here? My body tag. No. All right. Shouldn't have worked. So that shouldn't work. I hadn't saved it yet. Sorry. Okay. So like it doesn't work. It's not going to work. But let me open it back up.
Yeah, but we want to see that it doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah, because I want to show you why it doesn't work. I think that's a learning thing that we can learn from.
Yep.
It's still empty right here, and there's a reason that it doesn't work. Before while it was working, I hadn't saved the file yet, and it still had the static HTML in there. And so now that I've saved it, it doesn't work. And the reason is we're not calling our JavaScript function. So we need to call this function from our front end. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So how we're going to do this is I'm going to put this right in the body tag because we want this to work for every time. So we want to load in our list every time this page is loaded. We want to be able to see the drop down. Okay. And so on load equals, and then I'm going to just type in the name of my function. And again, it's case sensitive, so you got to make sure you know what you called it. And you also put the brackets after it. So now when we save it, and we go back over here, refresh it, it should have a drop down in it. So we got one, Charlotte. I did something wrong, Kevin.
Oh, cool.
Oh no. I did something wrong. Oh, I just said it equal. I need a
There you
plus
go.
equal there. So I need to add to it every time.
So hold on, talk me through that. You knew you did something wrong. So what
Yeah.
was your first instinct?
To go look at my loop there because I knew it had the last one in there. So
Okay, so you knew that you had the last one, so you like it must have been where it put them together in the loop. So you knew to look at the loop straight away.
Yeah.
Okay, see, for me, that's like the hardest thing with this kind of stuff is to know where to be like, because I've got like, let's say I've got 100 lines of code that I've done and it just doesn't work. I'd be like, okay, well, where's the part that I go back to? Is that just like you just have to understand your code then, I guess?
Yeah, it's just practice.
Okay.
I mean, you know, you'll like first time you run into stuff, you'll be looking at it for hours.
Okay.
You know,
and here you go. Sampa said the same thing. Cool debugging lesson. It's true. Like when something breaks, it's the best thing.
Right. So like so that's just showing you kind of what we did there. So you can see now we have like this we got this cool thing going on. So now what we need to do is I need to come back to the front end and I need to create a table. So I'm going to use a table to display the stats below this thing. So I don't really have any stats. Okay. And so right here, I've finished out my drop down. I've got my dog. All right. But underneath my drop down, I want to put a table in. This table is going to hold data. Now, tables back, if you've been around for a while, used to be like the way you laid out pages.
Yeah, it was horrible.
You don't do that anymore. You use what I'm using, like a Bootstrap framework or CSS Grid or something like that, and that's using div tags. But if you're displaying information, table's still the way to go. Okay, if you're displaying information. Okay, so I'm going to create a table in here, and this is going to hold our stats. So I'm going to say class equals, and then I'm going to give it some Bootstrap stuff here. So this is table, and then I'm going to call it table stripe. And what this does is it'll like color each one lighter and darker as it goes down the on the equal and the odd equal. So it's just a little bit more visible. If you don't know anything about tables, there's things called headers and bodies. And so so I can put in th head, and then I'm going to put in th body or t body. And when you're building templating, this is really important because you can put IDs to these if you need to find just the stuff in the body or just the stuff in the head. That's why you do it. It'll actually run without them. It's not necessary, but it's a good practice if you're using tables to go ahead and put these two things in here. So this is going to be the headings for it, and that's done with like TRs and THs. So a TR stands for table row, and this works a lot like the grid does. Remember the grid, we were talking about rows and columns? Tables work the same way, and probably Bootstrap and CSS Grid came from making tables better, and that's what you came out of it. But it used to be that you would use tables for everything. So what I'm going to do is this is going to be called THs. So, and I'm going to put my labels in here. So like the first label I have is going to be called like stats for all events. Okay. So I'm going to say stats for all events. And I'm going to make this dynamic too. I'm actually going to modify this to change it based on what they click in the drop down.
Okay.
And because of that, I need to
gotta give it a class.
Yeah. So the thing I'm going to add real quick is I'm going to make this span across all the columns. So I'm just going to do that. So it'll spread out across the top of the control. And then I need to give it an ID. I'm going to reference this from JavaScript. I'm just going to call it stats header. Again, just something I made up. That's what I want to call it. All right, so that's my header. And so that way it'll say stats for all events, or stats for Charlotte events, or stats for New York events. And so what I'm going to do is just change this text in here dynamically by grabbing this ID and setting the inner HTML on it.
Okay.
Like I did before. but we'll go over that in just a second. So now what I need is I need some TRs and TDs because these are in the body. So TR, this is going to come together. I hope people are watching. So like it's not good, you know. And so I need a label, and so I'm going to call this total attendance. Then I'm going to create another column in here. Actually, this needs to be two columns. So, and then in here, I'm going to give it an ID. This thing will have an ID, and this is what we're going to set, equal to 100. All right, and I'm going to put a placeholder here. You do not have to do this, but I'm just going to do it so that we can see kind of what when it's going to be. So this is not 100. It's really going to be total. Lowercase this. Still struggling with the keyboard, Kevin.
You get that.
So I'm going to go ahead and copy a bunch of these. So now I've got average, most, and least. Okay, so like so I'm going to go average. Do that one next. Most, and I'll make this attended, and least. And it's just going to show a number.
Right.
This is to get you started. You could put whatever you want in here, whatever you feel like. So you notice these IDs are all the same. I've got to change these so that I can uniquely identify each one. So I'm just going to call it average. And we'll call this one most. I'm going to call this one least. I probably could come up with better names like stats or something and prefix them with stat or something like that.
Yeah.
But for now, this is a pretty small little site, so I know kind of where I'm going. So let me scroll up here. So now you notice here I've got my table, and I've got a table body, and I've got a T-head. And inside of VS Code, if you click stuff, it'll highlight it and see it kind of put together. And so what we're going to do with these IDs is we're going to dynamically change these values based on the city that was clicked in our dropdown. But for now, we can save this and kind of see what our design looks like.
Okay.
And you can see it's not looking great. So we need to fix that.
Yep.
So,
but it is there.
It's there. Okay. All right. So we need to fix what we got going on here.
So what is it doing there?
It shouldn't stack like that. That's what it shouldn't do. It should stack underneath it, but it's not. So I must have button group. Oh, it's in the button group. So like it's part of the button group. So I don't want it part of the button group.
Okay.
So this is again like this thing will drive you crazy. And this is why, man, like this is why I set it up beforehand, because it will drive you insane, right? Trying to find what your div tag is, and people know what I'm talking about.
So basically your closing div tag for the button group was below the table that you put in. So the table was part of it.
Yeah. And now it'll stack on top of it because it's closed here and it takes the next element. And this tag should go with this row here, I think. Let me see. I may have too many divs. I don't even know if I need this tag. Too many of them. No backspace. Good Lord. Okay. So if I did that right, hopefully I did it right. We're not here looking at HTML all day. So it should look right now. Now I've got this in the wrong column now, so now I got to move this around. I messed this up. So let me just fix that real quick. On the so this is column.
Here you go. Alex Lee said live coding is hard. Props to you for debugging.
Oh yeah, I mean it's just the way it is, man. I've always told my bosses when I do this, you know, coding's not a spectator sport. Like when they want to
I want to sit over your shoulder.
Yeah, like what are you doing today? I'm like, I'm trying to make this work for you, dude. All right, so like you know, so now we're back. I deleted that div tag when I shouldn't have. I should have trusted my method
Okay.
there. And so, you know, so it's kind of working. But this doesn't do anything. I mean, like, it's not like changing our data out. So how much time we got? We got 5 minutes. All right.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, guys. We'll do this again on Monday. We'll keep going. I'm going to get this in the next 5 minutes. I'm going to get the stats up here so you can see how to call JavaScript from the back end. So we've already done one where this is dynamic. And now let's actually get the stats working. Okay. So I think that kind of cool. And we've got it ready to go here. So we're all set up. So let's look and see what we need to build here. So what I'm going to do is build something called display stats. Okay. And so I'm going to create a JavaScript function to do this. All right. I just made this up again. Notice that I'm using my lowercase, uppercase type methodology there, and always I try to put a comment above everything. We'll display the stats. Okay, so if you look close here, also have this thing called get events. All right, and so what it needs to do is when it clicks on this, it needs to get the events for the particular city that was clicked, and then I need to call display stats and display stats for that particular city. Okay, so I'm actually going to write a couple of different ones. I'm going to write 2 methods here, and I'm going to write another one called a get events. You may go over, Kevin, but I want to get this done. Hopefully everyone's staying with us. So like, and then, so now I've got the function called get events. All right. And it's also taken this as a parameter, which means that this a tag is being passed in. So it's an element. And so I just call this, what I do when I pass around tags, I just call it element. And it's just kind of something I do. All right. And so the next thing that I need to do, let me scroll up a little bit here so we can see kind of what we're going on. The next thing I need to do is I need to get a handle on the data string that's sent in. So the reason I did this is I'm looking at this data string in here, and I want to get this string which will tell me that it's New York, Charlotte, or whatever. Okay. So I'm going to let the city, I'm going to create a variable called city equals, and I'm going to call document dot get element by ID. Or in this case, I'm not going to use document. I'm going to use element. All right. And then I'm going to use something else called get attribute. The attributes are these different things in here. And it works just like get element ID, but you pass it a name, and I'm going to pass it that name called data-string. Now, if you're doing this a lot, then maybe this thing needs to be named something different, you know, but since we're referencing the element and we're calling it data string, then we know that we're on this particular element. And so this thing doesn't have to be necessarily unique because we're going to access it by the element itself. So
I think you got a typo in there too on that get attribute.
Do I? Yeah, I do.
I think so.
Work Yep. Wouldn't work. I need a spell checker. All right. So like, so that allows me to get the value in this, or get this element right here, this data string element from the a tag that's being passed in. So maybe a little bit complicated, but that's how it works. Okay. So then you remember our filtered events, start using it. So filtered events equals, and I'm going to go ahead and set it to, again, to the global list of all events, because this thing has been changed a lot. So I want it to start over. I want it to reset. Okay. So I've got all the events in my filtered events. Okay. Then I'm going to say document get element by ID. I don't know why that's not coming up. And then And I'm going to give it a name. And what I'm going to get here is my stats header. Remember the stat header that we got? I want to go ahead and change this thing and write it out based on what was clicked on. So we'll do that first. And so this is called stat header. Remember, it's case sensitive. And so like, this is kind of cool. What I can do is I can set the inner HTML of this equal to, and so since I have this attribute right here, I'm going to go ahead and hit my backtick because I'm going to use a temperate literal here. And I'm going to just overwrite what's in there, and I'm going to say stats for, and I'm going to pound this the $sign here, not pound, but the $sign, and then I'm going to pass in my variable, which is city, which is this. So the value of this is going to go in here. And then you can see how easy it is now to create strings instead of like all these plus signs and stuff like that. All right. So I'm going to save that and watch what happens. So if I did it right, we can watch what happens. So right now it says all, and if I click one, I should get, if I saved it, should be, if I'm working on the right one. It's not working.
I think you have a typo in that function there, get elements by ID.
Yep, there it is. Doesn't work. Thank you.
I'm not saying that's the fix, but
that is the fix. It's not finding it. So like I would have had to go to the debugger and fix that. So
okay.
So like yeah, so now it changed. So
okay.
That's it. So like that's changing that. It's all changing. It goes back to all. But we still need to change these stats real quick. And we're at 102, so I think I can do that in about 5 minutes. And then we can call it a day and come back and get the bottom half of this working.
Okay.
Loading in all the data and then do an add. So we can do that Monday. So that's kind of cool. So hopefully you learned something from there. If you didn't, it's okay. If you already knew how to do this, that's cool.
I like the template literal thing. When I learned that, I thought that was super good.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a condition here. So the only time I really want to display the stats is I'm going to do something where if it's not all, I'm going to just use all the events for my stats. If it's one of the cities, this is where I want to do some stuff. So if I'm going to say city, and I'm going to say not equal, and that's pound. And you can look at JavaScript operators if you want to know all the operators that you can do, but not equal is
exclamation equal.
Equal. It's not this. Okay, so it's this. That's just the way it works. And so if it's not equal to, and then I'm just going to go ahead and test a string here, and it's all. Remember, I could like lowercase this, and I'll lower. It's probably what I should do, but I know that this data string was typed in up here, so I know what this is going to be. It's going to be all because I typed it in up there. Let me look. You can see it's typed in right there, and it is case sensitive. So if you want to make it more bulletproof, you could probably lowercase or do something like that. But I know this is going to work. So like, and this will be pretty easy to do. Now, what we need to do now is filter the list. So we know filtered events holds all of the data for everything. Now what I want to do is just give me the New York ones if they picked it, or just give me the San Diego ones if they picked that. So I'm going to get this down to three rows instead of 9. Okay. And this is how you do that. So I'm going to set my filtered events, which I'm going to overwrite. This is what this is doing. Current filtered events. And I'm going to set it equal to events dot, and I'm going to filter it. And there's a built-in function called filter. And then I've got to create something like this anonymous function. And this looks a little crazy, but basically what this is doing is going to create a loop, and it's going to loop through all of the lists. And based on a condition, only returns the ones that match. So I could do this as a separate function, but for readability, this is something in JavaScript that you can do now. So I'll create a function, and then it's going to be called recursively pretty much. And so now I have a function in there, and notice here it's still got the brackets just like this function has. So it's really no different than a function like this. I'm just putting it in line with this filter. That's all I'm doing. Okay. So, and then I'm just going to check a quick thing here. So I'm going to write a quick if statement. And so my variable that's being passed in is the item that I want. Okay. And so I'm going to call item, which is the array of events. Okay. So array, if you look up here, let me scroll up here real quick. It's got a handle to all this. Item would be all of these. Only want city. And then again, this is why I put labels on stuff and why I'm using objects, because I can go in here and say item dot city. Kind of cool. And then say if it equals city. Okay. And notice in the if statement, double equal means test if they're equal. An equal would be like an assignment variable. So they're two different things. So if those are equal, return that item. That's it. That's going to filter them. Okay.
Cool.
And that's what that do is that it'll return the city that was clicked, a list of cities that have that. So that's all it is. And so we have to write one more function. We still got time, Kevin?
Sure. Keep going.
Okay. Keep going. It's a little intense, but it's less, it's more natural. So I'm going to create some variables on here. And so this is where I'm going to display my stats. So right after I call get events, I'm going to call a function inside this function, and I'm just going to call display stats. Remember what's happening is when I click, bam, I click on these A tags, it calls this method. And we saw it change the header in our document. And now it's getting a list of the cities based on the value that was being passed in. And now I'm going to call a function from there to write out the stats. Okay. So I'm going to say, let this equal to 0. And then I've got an average variable. And notice I'm using let in here so that it's scoped to inside this particular function. I'm going to say let most equals 0. And I'm just setting up some variables that I'm going to use. And I'm going ahead and assigning them. And I'm just setting them all to 0 because I want to overwrite all the values. Okay. So this filtered events, remember when we did this var statement up here? It's global to this file. So like now I can access filtered events inside this function. I don't have to pass it around, things like that. I could pass it around if I wanted to, but that's not what I'm going to do. All right. The other thing too is I'm going to go ahead and create another one called current attendance, because I'm going to like add up a bunch of attendance, and then I'm going to do some math on it. I need to add them all up because I know I'm going to have 3 in here. All right. So first thing I need to do is create a loop, and that loop is going to go I'm going to loop over the filtered events, not the total events, the filtered events. Again, all arrays start at 0. And then I'm going to make sure that as long as I less than filtered events length. Now, this is what's kind of tricky in here. I'm also going to make sure that I only look at the attendance and not all the objects. So remember, this is a multi-dimensional array. So really what I want to get is I want to get this column now. Before we were looking at cities. Now I want to get to attendance. Okay. I hope that makes sense. And so how I do that, I want to get, well, let me finish this up here. All right. And so I'm going to say length, then I'm getting ahead of myself, I plus, and then I'm going to hit brackets. All right. So now I know that I'm going to go between from 0 to the length of this. And then what I want to do is I want to get the current attendance for the city being passed in. And so I'm going to set that equal to filtered events, just a list of the filtered events that we had. There we go. And I'm going to get value or the position that I'm at. So I may have more than one. And then I only want the attendance property. So that's how you get to a multi-dimensional array and you get to the correct column you want. So this is going to take those numeric values, and that's my current attendance. Okay. So now total, a plus equal current attendance. So current attendance, the first time may be 50,000. The second time it's 60. The third time it's 70. This will add those together.
Okay.
Okay. All right. And so now total will have, as it's going through the loop, all of these attendances added up. The current one is just the one I'm currently on. Hopefully that makes sense. So while I'm inside this loop, I can do everything that I want to do in here. So I can also check what the most is. So if I say most is less than the current attendance, right? I'm going to have another if statement in here. I'm going to set most equal to the current attendance. Now what's going on there is I'm looping through, and let's say the first time I come through, it's 50,000. So my total now is 50,000. My most starts out 0, and it says, hey, is most less than 50,000? Yes. Okay, now my most right now is 50,000. The second time it comes through, let's say attendance is now 60,000. It adds it together, so 50 plus 60 is 110. But then it says most is currently 50. Is it less than 60? And it says yes. So now it sets most equal to the new current attendance that's currently being done. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. So then we got to do another one, a little tricky one here. And this is, we're going to find out the least. We can do the same kind of thing. All right. Least is greater than current attendance. Okay. But we also need to do this too. We need to do an or statement. So an or is double pipes here. That's really different from my other one. And I need to check to see if it's less than 0. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to do something tricky here, and I'm going to change this to -1. Okay. So in general, what I'm thinking of is you can't have negative attendance. So you only can have 0 or greater. All right. So when I check this, is my least greater than the current attendance, or is it less than 0? And then I'm going to bam. Okay. And then I'm going to say, nope, none of those are true. And so, or they're all true, or one of them's true. And I'm going to set this equal to current attendance. That's going to give me the least attended value. All right. And then finally, after all of this, and I've looped through all of these, on the outside of this loop, I'm just going to set my average equal to the total divided by the length. So we know the length of the array is 3. So this would give me my average per event. Did I spell it correctly?
No, but that's good because you misspelled it up top. So here's what happened. When you declared it, you misspelled it. You had 2 E's in it, which what it did then was the IntelliSense kicked in and it knew.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So it would have worked.
Correctly.
But it doesn't need to be spelled correctly, but it still would have worked.
Yeah. So now I've got all my variables set up, and all I got to do now is set them to the page. I'm going to copy something for expedience here. Good. We can do it real quick. So I know that I want to do get element by ID. And I'm going to give it the total because that's what I called it in my HTML. If you remember my HTML, this ID total, average, most, and least, they all have IDs. I'm going to set them now equal to these variables. And how I do that is use the inner HTML. And I'm going to take my total, and that's my variable that I've been calculating there. And then I do something, this is called toLocalString. Because it's a number, I need to convert it. And it's just a way to make sure that it formats correctly to the page. So, and that's just an experience. You would see it come up wrong, and then you figure out why. So you learn like how you get things displayed. All right. And so I can change this one to let's do most. Doesn't really matter what order you put it in because we're getting to the IDs. Then we can do least here. I can do least here. and then I do average. Now I'm going to have to do some work on average here because I want to, because I'm doing a division operation. I want to get something that gives me the minimum. I just want 2 digits. I don't want taking out the 15 digits, you know. So I did this to local string. So this is a little bit, you can pass parameters to this. And to be fair, I actually looked this up. So saying I don't know everything. So like I can get this in here. Let's see if I did it correctly. I need one more probably. I think, yep. And so what this is going to do is make sure that I rounds my number to 2 digits. Okay. So I'll get like 0.25 instead of 0.66667 repeating, something like that.
Okay.
So if I did all that correctly, I should be able to go up and we should be able to see this work, we hope. Yep. And it did.
Cool.
So now we can go to San Diego and go to Charlotte and we can go to all. And you can see down there it's got like an average there, 6667.
Okay.
And that's what that one thing did for me. The other one's formatted with commas. So I thought that was important. 2 local string gives me commas. And then this gives me, so that's it. Any questions before we leave? We've been over, might as well answer some questions at this point. So like, is any questions?
Yeah, I don't think we have any, unless people have them now, put them in. Well, Mark's made a point here, which I think we'll talk about, but yeah. It would have been easier to use React to this for this task.
Maybe. So what I'm trying to show you is with vanilla JavaScript, so that you can learn how to do it without frameworks. Sometimes you don't need React on a project. Sometimes you want to use Angular. Sometimes you want to use your own templating functions. You may be using Mustache. You may get on a project that's not using Angular. So like you need to know how JavaScript's kind of working. So that's the approach here, is to make something framework agnostic. I totally realized that templating and all those binding things, totally get that, you know, but this is how it works.
Yep. I started to do that.
And I think when I did it, I think, so to let you know, I probably wrote this in 4 hours or 5 hours if I had to put them all together over the, you know, because I didn't really spend a solid block of time. I'd make it done faster if I was just sat down and did it. But that's, this is a cool little coding project. And what I would say, Mark, you know, hey, if you're going for React jobs, yeah, just code it with React, man. It's all good, man. It's really good.
Yep. It's like aligning your job with your
stack.
Project too. Yep.
Yeah. But what I will say this too, think about this. If we're looking at portfolios and I do push this on like Netlify, or I've got it in my GitHub repo and someone wants to clone this and just look at my code, then they don't have to get React going. So like this will pretty much run in a folder. So it's kind of cool.
Right.
Like, right. Yeah, so it's more lightweight. It's more portable. That's not that React and those things do have their merits for sure. Same thing, we use Razor Pages and ASP.NET. So, I mean, they all have their merits.
Here you go. Ishmael said this is good and healthy for the brain, and that's true.
Okay, cool. So we hopefully over the weekend, maybe you can aspire to build this, you know, based on the requirements I have. I will push the code out sometime next week when I'm done. And then it'll be on GitHub and we'll announce that when it goes out.
Yeah, we want to see like your guys' answer to the same initial coding challenge, given like, what was the initial thing again? You want to highlight it again? The initial, what was the where we started the actual coding challenge we based this on?
Yeah, so the coding challenge it's based on is like, given an array, can you give me the total, the sum of the values in the array?
Okay. Oh, and look, Mark almost has a finished app for this.
Okay, Mark.
We would love to see it, man. Yeah.
Glad to see it.
Yeah. Next week, you got the weekend to work on it.
Yeah.
We'll come back next week. We'll take a look.
So, you know, and if you use Superdog, you know, put a mask on him.
That's funny.
Story Someone want us to
I have
put
a couple
mask
final
on.
things too here before we
Yeah.
wrap up. If you are here for the first time, you can check us out online. We have a couple of things you can do. You can go to codefinder.com/job roadmap, and you can get put on our mailing list. Basically, we'll give you the 5 steps to breaking in as a developer. If you're interested in the bootcamp itself, you can go to codefinder.com/virtual. We have a new class starting, and I forget again, July 6th. We said yesterday. I think July 6th is our next one. We do have a lot of apps for that. So if you are interested, make sure you put in your application, and that's all on that page there.
Yeah, just please subscribe and like. And specifically, you know, if you want to see more coding tutorials, we'll keep doing them. But if you're bored to tears, we'll stop. You know, we can go back to having video game quizzes. But we do a lot of these in Coder Foundry. So like we're just showing you kind of what our students go through. And we're just trying to say, hey, if you're learning to code, these are the types of things that you should be able to do. And hopefully that inspires you. Even if you don't come to our boot camp, we totally get that everyone's going to come in. But hopefully we can help you get a job by showing you maybe some learning some stuff. And we got some, so hopefully this is helpful to you. So anyway, I think that's it, Kevin.
Let's wrap this up.
It's time for
lunch. We'll be back
lunch.
on Monday. It is. We'll be back Monday.
Day 3 of Superdog Events, and we'll just do the bottom half of this, so we can actually add the data in.
Awesome.
So we'll get that over here.
Everyone have a great weekend.
Yep. And we'll add some data in with the mobile. All right, cool.
Awesome.
Well, anyway, good luck. And always, I will say, just keep on coding.